You are listening to the BBNI podcast, Journeys of Faith, Leadership and Life.
Welcome to the BBNI podcast. My name is Bethany Smith, Engagement Officer and Programme Coordinator at BBNI. Our podcast series is about sharing journeys of faith, leadership and life. At BBNI, our object is to advance Christ's kingdom among children and young people. This is done every week in our BB companies, and one way of engaging children and young people with the gospel is through our programmes. We also partner with other organisations to enhance our programmes, keeping our centre focused on Christ. I'm delighted to be here today with John Key, who is the Director of Summer Madness. Welcome, John.
Thank you. Lovely to be here, Bethany.
Yes, lovely to have you. Before we start to the podcast, can you tell us a little bit about your life, your faith journey, work life, a little bit about who you are?
Sure thing. It's a long life. How long have you got? Away back in Lurgan in the 60s, I grew up going to Lurgan College and attending Shankill Parish Church as my church. So I grew up man and boy in the church, and from that sense, I always had a strong connection with faith. But it was in my early teens that really connected very directly and personally. It was a mission held in the town hall in Lurgan where it kind of crystallised for me, and I kind of decided to make it my own. And from then on, I began to get very involved. It was Scripture Union actually played a huge part in those early formative years. Yeah. So I grew up in Lurgan, began to get involved in youth work in my local church. And from there, I went to uni, did theology, teaching, and into youth work with the Education Library Board. Okay. So youth work has always been kind of part of my background and history and passion, and I sense that that's how God has led me, actually. I'm married to Arlene, and we have 3 grown-up children. They've all studied across the water, boo-hoo. So 2 of them are still now living in London, and our youngest, Charlotte, is in Edinburgh in Fania.
Very good. Thank you so much, John. John, you are the face behind Summer Madness. Summer Madness exists to enthuse, equip and engage the youth and the young adults of Ireland in the Christian faith, so they may be real change makers in their churches and communities across the island. I have seen the amazing work personally of Summer Madness as an adult, but also as a young person. Can you explain a little bit about Summer Madness? What is Summer Madness, but what is your heart behind that as well?
Yeah. We kicked off the festival in 1987.
Okay, wow.
And the inspiration for it really was a visit that I did to Greenbelt Festival in England. And we came back and we sensed that there was something that we could do like that over here. It was really a discipleship initiative. Okay. And our heart back in the early days was to really equip and support and encourage young people in their faith and learning how to apply that into their context and culture and life experience and their worldview and all of that. So the heart of it was a discipleship initiative. But very quickly, we also discovered that it was a tool for harvesting faith amongst young people who were coming along and maybe were on the fringes and hadn't a clarity as to what their faith meant, and it brought them really into God's heart. And so there was an explosion of faith in those early days, and as young people came and brought their friends, the thing mushroomed over those first few years. But it's always been at the heart of it a kind of a discipleship initiative, but God has often used those 5 days under canvas to bring people often for the first time into a realisation of God's love. So we began in Castle Archdale. Yeah. We've been to Gosford. We've been to the King's Hall. We've been to Glenarm. We did a day event just as COVID was kind of finishing off up in UUC, and nowadays we're up in the Cistercian Monastery in Portlaoise.
Brilliant. That's class. And I know I was there when it was Glenarm, and obviously have been at Port Glenone as well, and just the amazing work of Summer Madness and the heart behind that. Thank you for sharing that, John. This year, the theme of Summer Madness was living life on purpose. Some of our BB companies had the chance for the first time ever to go down and experience Summer Madness, and really get an idea about what Summer Madness was and the heart behind it as well. For those that didn't get a chance to be at Summer Madness or who have never been at Summer Madness before, what is the importance of living life on purpose, especially for BBNI leaders, but also for the young people that they're speaking to?
Yes, I mean, each year we do choose a particular theme and try to shape the main stage programme around that, and that filters into the seminars and so forth. And this year, I suppose the heart of it was encouraging young people to be intentional in their lives, and that crosses over all of the dimensions of their life, and especially, of course, their faith and what that looks like to examine faith and adopt it for yourself, whether they've been brought up in a kind of Christian context, a family or a church going or otherwise. What is it about faith that they have going to hold on to for themselves? People talk about as a child, often you go on holidays and your mum packs your bag for you, and young people are getting to the point where they've got to pack their own bag and decide for themselves what they're going to put in there and how they're going to shape their lives. And that was at the heart of it, actually, encouraging young people to think for themselves and reach out for themselves, and not just around the area of faith, because there's so much about their own personal development and career choices and friendship choices, all of that, and being intentional about that and how they approach that. And well, as it happened this year, there was quite a phenomenal response, actually. When we talk about intentionality, on one of the evenings at Madness, it was the Saturday evening with the Big Top going on morning and evening, and Youth for Christ are brilliant at offering an alternative main stage as well during those times. And God's Spirit moved in quite a powerful way, and there were almost 150 responded in faith for the first time on the Saturday night, and another 45 in the YFC tent. And I suppose that encapsulates that little moment of intentionality where we give young people the chance to cross the threshold for themselves and see how that works out from there. And we hope that as they go back into their churches and BBs and youth groups, that intentionality begins to shape their lives, and they take the next step and the next and the next. But that's just one of the stepping stones that we hope it will be.
Brilliant. Just a wee follow-on question from that. You'd mentioned about alternative main stage, but you've also mentioned about Big Top. For anybody who hasn't been at Summer Madness before, what would be the differences in those two places? Yeah,
I suppose, well, if you've not been before, the shape of the day at Madness kind of starts and ends at those two bookmarks where there's the main stage and the Big Top, and the alternative main stage run by YFC, and it's the same in the evening. So the day is bookmarked by those two big plenary sessions, and then the day diversifies into seminars, workshops, sports, competitions, music, drama, debates, outdoor activities, competitions, the whole gamut of stuff going on. But main stage is where there's a very clear presentation of teaching and of response and worship together as a festival. And that over the years we've noticed is great, and it's easy for church-going young people to kind of connect with that often. But if you've come to Summer Madness and you're very much maybe on the fringes, or you don't like big crowds, YFC do an alternative kind of setting, and I suppose the program is a little bit more magazine styled, and it's a little bit more interactive and engaging from that point of view, and there's not an intensity perhaps to the worship style, and the speaking might be that little bit shorter and broken down. So there are two different kind of styles of approach. And yes, the main stage might have up to a couple of thousand in it, and the YFC tent, they're getting up to about 250 and filling out their tent now as well. But yes, two slightly different styles.
Yeah.
It might be to do with the personality of the young people. Sometimes people will go to one for 1 or 2 sessions, go to the other for others. We leave it up to the leaders to suss out where it lands easiest for their group.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for explaining that. John, Summer Madness has been operating for 37 years, so you're getting close to 40 years of operating. It's probably hard to choose one highlight. I would imagine there's many highlights over the years. But can you even give us 2 highlights of Summer Madness throughout the years, something personal to you? What has been the highlight, and how would that encourage BB leaders and BB leaders to take their young people?
Yes, wow. I thought I had an answer to that, and now I'm going to rethink it.
That is okay.
Over the years, Madness has also spawned lots of other initiatives, and I couldn't but, I suppose, highlight Street Reach as being a very significant one in our journey. Street Reach kicked off while we were at the King's Hall, 2003 to 2007, where we did community outreach programs on the back of the festival. So we did the kind of standalone festival, and you can come to that and go home, or you could stay on for another 5 days. And we went out into, ultimately, after the 5-year programme, we were probably up to about 32 different projects right across Belfast, where you just served the community, and you went, and there were up to, I think, about 1,800 young people engaged in that, and there were double-decker buses lined up every morning at the King's Hall, taking young people out in the afternoons to serve communities right across the north, southeast and west of Belfast. And that then kind of, we decided very consciously we would stop that in 2007 and ask groups, okay, if you have felt this has been valuable as well, take the idea home and do it in your own town, village or whatever. And a lot of that did happen. So we love young people to come and engage with the issues of faith, but then actually make it practical and go home and turn that into ways in which they can serve one another and serve their local communities. So yeah, I would have to say that as a highlight, looking back, that's something that I'd be very very happy about. This year at the festival, I did mention, I suppose, the big response on main stage, and it's easy to look at that and be really encouraged and about all, but even apart from that, one of the things that I found really encouraging this year was, as I walked around the festival, it was on more than one occasion, but there is an image in my mind where just in one of the little kind of casual tents around the site where people can gather around picnic tables and have coffee or whatever, and there was a couple of young lads sitting at the picnic table, and one of them was just stood over the other with his hand on his shoulder praying for his mate, and that just struck me. That's what it's about. As much as it is the big top and the big response, where young people actually begin to integrate this into their ordinary conversations and their ordinary interactions with each other. And I thought, that's a wee memory that I will take away from this year especially. And funny, I did mention that I don't know if I mentioned it or somebody mentioned it to me, that they noticed that happening around the site. And it was something that I picked up on perhaps more this year. But yeah, it's where young people take that away and begin to say, yes, this is normal. This is, something that we can just incorporate into our own experience in any moment. Yeah,
I think that's so important. Looking at a festival like that, it's so easy to go away afterwards and be so enthused, but during the year that can drop off. So even teaching them that in the small moments, that God is working in those small moments and not just at during the summer, and at Summer Madness, but actually it's teaching them to go out and be that support for their friends in the small moments.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
That's brilliant. We could talk about Summer Madness, I am sure, all day. But before we wrap up, is there any insight you can give us for Summer Madness 2025 and why our BB companies should think about getting involved within that?
Yes, no, absolutely. Well, the theme next year is called Belonging.
Okay.
And actually, as a theme, it's begun to really excite our seminar group who shape the seminars and our main stage group. And the speakers next year addressing that is the chap Dan Blythe,
Okay.
who works for Alpha, the Global Alpha guy, and he does all the Alpha videos and so forth. And another guy, Joshua Luke Smith, who's been to Madness before. He's a spoken word artist that we've used before. And chap who used to head up Youth for Christ here, Steve McCready.
Okay.
He heads up a church now in Australia, in Perth. And our worship leaders from Holland will be back, Japheth and Sifra Becks, and they had a fantastic way of really just encouraging young people into God's presence. So we're excited both by the kind of the speaker lineup and the theme and how that's going to be unpacked. But really the bottom line is using the opportunity of madness within your group to allow young people to take another step in their faith. And the connection that you make relationally with young people over a weekend away, and of course Summer Madness is the best residential you can consider, but any residential, your leaders will know that already. It's really a highly concentrated opportunity for them to develop their connection with young people, and for the young people to take faith seriously and ask some big questions and begin to think through stuff for themselves and to express their own kind of independence and grow in confidence and their ability to work their way through those big steps of faith. And yes, you haven't got young people for long. Make the most of the time you have with them. And I applaud all of the leaders that give of their time week by week by week. But make the most of that and use those golden moments and those golden opportunities like Summer Madness. And there are others out there. And there are other festivals out there as well. But Summer Madness especially, we're on the doorstep, and it's a fantastic way of pulling the group together. Ask the groups that were there this year. I think they had a fantastic time.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, John. If you've listened to our podcast before, you will always know that we ask our guests the same question. John, can you give us one piece of advice that you wish that you had been given when you were younger? You've gone through youth work now for a long time, and what's one piece of advice that you would like to give?
That's an interesting question, because I almost feel like I've written the book on this. A little while ago, I did produce a book called 40 Days of Hindsight. Okay. And I asked 40 different leaders what little item of hindsight would they like to pass on to the next generation of leaders from the mistakes that they've made. And so there's two things that I'll pull out of this for you. That's around making mistakes, for one thing, and that's the hindsight bit of it. And there's an old Chinese proverb that says, fall down 7 times and get up 8. And Winston Churchill himself said, success consists in going from failure to failure without the loss of enthusiasm. And so I would be saying, don't worry about failing. In fact, learn from the failure of others, because you'll not have time to make all the mistakes yourself. And don't be afraid of failure. But the other thing, more positively, I would say, be sure to go out and get a mentor that you can share with all your kind of deepest fears and concerns and hopes, and build in time for that mentor into your life. And you've got to do that for yourself. Nobody will do that for you. But the key is, I think, to be able to move on and allow God to shape and mold you as you go forward. Be careful about your friends, choose your friends wisely, and find a mentor. Well, let me sum it up. with a little quote from Hebrews 12, 1-3. Let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run the race with perseverance that's marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus.
Thank you for coming to the BB&I podcast, John. It's been so great to hear from you, and thank you so much for sharing with us. Thank you to everyone who has watched and listened to the BB&I podcast. Please don't forget to subscribe to keep up to date.
Thank you for listening to the BB&I podcast. Subscribe to us on wherever you get your podcasts. We look forward to joining with you next time.